The birthday card sat on my dashboard, mocking me with its cheerful purple flowers and gold script. 25 years old today. A quarter century of existing, and I was driving back to the house I'd spent 15 years trying to escape, all because guilt is a powerful motivator when your mother calls crying about how you never visit anymore. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Traffic crawled along Dale Mabry Highway as Tampa's afternoon sun turned my car into an oven. I cranked up the air conditioning and tried to remember why I'd agreed to this. Oh right, because Linda had used her wounded voice, the one that implied I was a terrible daughter for moving out at 18 and only coming back for major holidays. Never mind that those holidays always ended with Tony finding some reason to remind me I wasn't really part of their family anymore, that I was a guest in what used to be my home. The house in Carrollwood looked exactly the same as always. Beige stucco, red tile roof, perfectly manicured lawn that Tony obsessed over like it was Augusta National. His black pickup truck dominated the driveway, still sporting the Brennan Construction logo on the door. I parked on the street, grabbed the bottle of wine I'd brought for my mother, and walked up the pathway lined with those solar lights that Tony insisted gave the place class. Linda opened the door before I could knock, her smile too bright, her hug too quick. She smelled like the same perfume she'd worn since I was 12, something floral and cloying that used to make me feel safe but now just made me anxious. Happy birthday, sweetheart. I made your favorite, lasagna. She ushered me inside, talking rapidly about the weather, about her book club, about anything except the tension that always filled this house like swamp humidity. Tony's watching the game in the den. Why don't you go put your things in your room and freshen up? My room. I hadn't stayed overnight here in 7 years, not since the Christmas Eve when Tony had too much whiskey and told me exactly what he thought about freeloading kids who acted too good for their family. But I nodded and headed up the stairs, my feet remembering every creaking step. The door to my childhood bedroom was closed. I turned the handle and pushed it open, and my brain couldn't immediately process what I was seeing. The room was empty. Not messy, not rearranged. Empty. The white walls that had once been covered in posters of bands I loved showed nothing but nail holes and rectangular patches of unfaded paint. My bed was gone. My dresser was gone. My bookshelf that had held every novel I'd treasured was gone. Even the curtains had been removed, leaving bare windows that let in the harsh afternoon light. I stood in the doorway, my overnight bag slipping from my shoulder to the floor. The wine bottle nearly followed it. This wasn't possible. I'd left things here, stored things here. Books and photo albums and my father's things, the boxes of his belongings that Linda had let me keep in my closet because she couldn't bear to look at them but knew I wasn't ready to let go. My father's things. I ran to the closet and yanked open the door. Empty. The boxes were gone. The comic books he'd collected since he was a kid, the ones he'd promised would be mine someday. The photo albums documenting my first 9 years, when he was alive and our family was whole. The baseball cards, the vintage action figures still in their packaging, the stack of Disney stock certificates he'd shown me once and said would pay for my college. All of it. Gone. I heard footsteps on the stairs and turned to find Tony filling the doorway, a beer in one hand, his usual expression of vague irritation on his face. He'd put on weight since I'd last seen him, his construction company polo shirt straining across his gut. Where is everything? My voice came out higher than I intended, panic threading through each word. He took a long drink of his beer before answering. Got rid of it. You moved out years ago. Can't expect us to run a storage facility for your junk. My junk? Tony, those were my things. My father's things. You had no right to touch any of it. He shrugged, that infuriating casual gesture that said my feelings were irrelevant. You abandoned it. Left it here collecting dust. I sold what was worth selling, tossed the rest. That's what happens when you don't take care of your own stuff. The room tilted slightly. You sold my father's comic book collection? The one worth thousands of dollars? The one my mother knew was supposed to be mine? Tony's jaw tightened. Don't start with that entitled attitude. Your mother and I needed the money. That collection was sitting in boxes doing nobody any good. We got a fair price for it. A fair price. For my inheritance. For the only tangible pieces of my father I had left. I pulled my phone from my pocket, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. What are you doing? Tony's voice had shifted, taking on that edge I remembered from my teenage years, the warning tone that usually preceded one of his explosions. I'm calling the police. What you did is theft. Those weren't your belongings to sell. He moved fast for a big man. The beer bottle hit the floor, spraying foam across the carpet as he crossed the room and grabbed my wrist. The phone clattered away, sliding under where my dresser used to be. You're not calling anybody, he hissed, his face inches from mine. His breath reeked of beer and something sour. You think you can come into my house and threaten me? You think your dead daddy's junk means you get to disrespect me? I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. Let go of me. Mom. Linda. Your mother knows exactly what I did, and she agreed with it. We're done enabling your nostalgia trip. You're 25 years old. Time to grow up and stop living in the past. I did something then that I'd never done before in all the years of Tony's bullying and intimidation. I fought back. Using my free hand, I shoved him as hard as I could. He stumbled backward, more from surprise than force, and released my wrist. I dove for my phone. That's when his fist connected with my shoulder, spinning me sideways. I crashed into the wall where my bed used to be, stars exploding across my vision. Before I could recover, he grabbed my hair and yanked my head back. You want to put your hands on me? In my house? He shoved me forward and I fell, landing hard on my hands and knees. Pain shot through my left wrist as it twisted beneath me. I heard footsteps thundering up the stairs and prayed it was Linda coming to stop this, but Tony's boot connected with my ribs before I could turn my head. The world went sideways. I tasted copper and realized I'd bitten my lip. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard my mother's voice, but she wasn't yelling at Tony to stop. She was saying my name in that disappointed tone, the one she used when I'd let her down. Jessica Marie, what have you done? Why do you always have to start trouble? I don't remember crawling to my phone. I don't remember managing to dial 911 with my good hand while my left wrist screamed in protest. But I must have, because suddenly there were sirens in the distance, growing closer, and Tony was backing away from me with his hands raised like he was the victim here. Linda crouched beside me, her hands fluttering uselessly near my shoulders but not quite touching, as if my pain might be contagious. Why did you have to call them? She kept repeating it like a mantra. Why did you have to make this worse? The sirens stopped outside. Car doors slammed. The doorbell rang, followed by heavy knocking and a voice calling out Tampa Police Department. Tony looked at me then, and for just a second, I saw something like fear cross his face before it hardened back into anger. You're going to tell them this was a misunderstanding, he said quietly. You're going to say you fell. I wiped blood from my lip with my good hand and met his eyes. No, I said. I'm not doing that anymore. The front door burst open. I heard multiple sets of feet pounding up the stairs, voices calling out to announce their presence. 2 officers appeared in my doorway, hands on their holsters, taking in the scene. An empty room, a woman on the floor bleeding, a man standing over her with clenched fists, another woman kneeling nearby looking guilty. Ma'am, are you injured? The officer was a woman, maybe late 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that had clearly seen this scenario too many times. Who hit you? I pointed at Tony with my good hand. He did. He attacked me when I tried to call you about him stealing my belongings. The second officer, a younger guy who looked like he spent his off days at the gym, immediately moved toward Tony. Sir, I need you to step back and put your hands behind your head. This is my house, Tony protested, but he complied. This is a family matter. My stepdaughter got upset and started getting physical. I was defending myself. The female officer knelt beside me, her eyes scanning my injuries with professional efficiency. Her name tag read Torres. "I'm Officer Torres. Can you stand? We need to get you checked out. Looks like that wrist might be broken." She helped me up carefully, supporting my weight as I swayed. My ribs felt like someone had taken a baseball bat to them, each breath a sharp reminder of Tony's boot. Officer Torres guided me toward the hallway, away from Tony and Linda, but I heard her partner reading Tony his rights. Linda was crying now, real tears streaming down her face as she clutched at the younger officer's arm. "Please, this is all a misunderstanding. They just got into an argument. Nobody meant for anyone to get hurt." Officer Torres kept me moving down the stairs, her hand steady on my elbow. Once we were outside on the front lawn, she pulled out a small notebook. "I need to get your information for the report. Full name and date of birth?" "Jessica Marie Harper. And today's my birthday, actually." I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. 25. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. She paused in her writing and looked up at me with something like sympathy. "Happy birthday. I'm sorry it's going like this." She clicked her pen. "I need your social security number too, for the report." I rattled off the numbers I'd memorized since I was 16 and got my first job. Officer Torres walked back to her patrol car and I saw her typing on the computer mounted between the front seats. I stood there on the lawn I used to play on as a child, holding my injured wrist against my chest, watching neighbors peek through their curtains at the police cars with their lights still flashing. Officer Torres was taking a long time at her computer. Too long for a simple report entry. I saw her lean forward, squinting at the screen, then pick up her radio and say something I couldn't hear. The younger officer emerged from the house with Tony in handcuffs, but Torres held up a hand to stop him from putting Tony in the car. She walked back over to me, and her expression had changed from sympathetic to confused. "Miss Harper, when was the last time you checked your credit report?" The question was so unexpected that I just stared at her. "I don't know. Never, I guess." "Why?" Officer Torres glanced back at her computer screen, then at Tony being held by her partner, then back to me. "Because according to our database, you have outstanding warrants in Polk County and Pasco County for unpaid traffic violations. You're also listed as the registered owner of 3 vehicles, one of which was involved in a hit and run last month in Lakeland." "That's impossible," I said. "I only have one car, and it's right there." I pointed to my Honda parked on the street. "I've never even been to Lakeland." Torres nodded slowly. "That's what I thought you'd say." She looked at me more carefully now, really seeing me. "Harper. Your first name isn't Jessica Marie, is it?" "It's Jessica Marie Harper." "Related to Tom Harper?" "My father." The words came out automatically. "He died when I was 9. How did you know him?" "We went to high school together," Torres said softly. "I heard he passed young. Heart attack, right?" "I'm so sorry." She paused, and I watched her putting pieces together in her mind. "Miss Harper, I think you need to sit down. We need to talk about what's showing up when I run your name, because unless I'm very wrong, I think you're a victim of something much bigger than assault." The emergency room at Tampa General smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee. Officer Torres had insisted on driving me herself while her partner transported Tony to the county jail. My mother had followed in her car, though she'd stayed in the waiting room when Torres accompanied me back to the examination area. The nurse who took my vitals kept glancing at the officer standing guard by the curtain, her eyes full of questions she was too professional to ask out loud. The doctor who examined me was a tired-looking man in his 50s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He pressed gently on my ribs, apologized when I winced, and ordered x-rays of my wrist and chest. While we waited for the imaging results, Officer Torres pulled a chair close to my bed and opened a thick folder she'd retrieved from her patrol car. "I need to show you something, but I want to prepare you first. What I'm about to share is going to be upsetting." She spread several printed pages across the rolling table they positioned over my lap. These are credit reports. All in your name. All showing accounts you say you never opened. I stared at the pages, my good hand trembling as I tried to focus on the text. There were credit cards from banks I'd never walked into. Car loans for trucks I'd never driven. A mortgage for a property in Brandon that I'd never seen. Each entry showed balances in the thousands, most of them delinquent, all of them destroying a credit score I thought I'd been carefully building. How is this possible? I looked up at Torres, hoping she had answers that would make this nightmare make sense. I've never applied for any of these. I have one credit card that I use for gas and groceries and pay off every month. That's it. Torres tapped one of the pages with her pen. This mortgage was taken out 3 years ago. The address listed is in Brandon, but when I called the title company, they said the property was sold 8 months later for a $50,000 profit. The money went to an account we're still tracing. 3 years ago I was finishing my pharmacy tech certification and working part-time at Walgreens. I could barely afford my rent. There's no way I bought a house. The doctor returned before Torres could respond, carrying films that he clipped to a light board on the wall. You've got a fractured wrist, he said, pointing to a clear break in the bone. We'll need to set it and put you in a cast. The ribs are bruised but not broken, which is lucky. You're also showing signs of a mild concussion, so I'm going to want someone to monitor you for the next 24 hours. No sleeping for extended periods, no driving. Do you have someone who can stay with you? I thought about my apartment in Seminole Heights, my quiet refuge that suddenly felt very far away. I thought about my best friend Mia, who would drop everything if I called but was currently in Orlando visiting her parents. I thought about my mother sitting in the waiting room, and wondered if she even counted as someone who could be trusted with my well-being. I'll make sure she's not alone, Torres said, making a note in her folder. Ms. Harper has a situation that's going to require ongoing police involvement. We'll arrange appropriate supervision. The setting of my wrist was excruciating despite the local anesthetic. I focused on the ceiling tiles and tried not to think about Tony's hands on me, his boot connecting with my ribs, my mother's voice asking why I always had to cause trouble. When it was finally done, my left arm was encased in bright blue fiberglass from knuckles to elbow, heavy and foreign and oddly comforting in its solidity. Proof that this had really happened. Evidence that couldn't be explained away. Torres walked me out to the waiting room where my mother sat clutching her purse like a life preserver. Linda stood when she saw us, her eyes red from crying, her makeup smeared into tragic masks under each eye. Jessica, honey, I'm so glad you're okay. We need to talk about what happened. Tony didn't mean to hurt you. He just lost his temper when you got physical with him first. If we all just calm down and discuss this rationally, I'm sure we can work something out before this goes any further. Officer Torres stepped between us before I could respond. Mrs. Brennan, your husband is being charged with felony battery and assault. This isn't something that gets worked out over coffee. She glanced at me, then back at my mother. Additionally, there are serious questions about identity theft and fraud that we need to investigate. I'm going to need you to come down to the station tomorrow to answer some questions. Linda's face went pale beneath the smeared makeup. Identity theft? What are you talking about? Jessica, what have you been telling them? I haven't told them anything except the truth. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, flat and distant. Torres found all of it on her computer. Credit cards and loans and warrants, all in my name. All for things I never did. She paused, watching my mother's reaction. Did you know about any of this, Mom? Did you know Tony was using my information? My mother's mouth opened and closed several times without sound coming out. Her hands twisted the strap of her purse until I thought the leather might tear. I don't know what you're implying, but Tony would never do something like that. There must be some mistake. Maybe someone stole your identity. Maybe someone at one of those stores where you shop got your information. Ma'am, Officer Torres said carefully, identity theft by family members is unfortunately very common. Especially when one parent remarries and the step-parent has access to all the child's documents. Birth certificates, social security cards, school records. Everything needed to open accounts. Linda shook her head violently, backing away from us toward the sliding glass doors that led to the parking lot. No. No, you're not going to pin this on Tony. He's been nothing but good to this family. He took us in when we had nothing. He gave Jessica a home, put food on the table, treated her like his own daughter even when she was difficult and ungrateful. This is just her way of getting back at him for disciplining her tonight. She's always been dramatic. Always exaggerating. Just like her father. The mention of my dad sent a spike of rage through me so sharp I took a step forward despite the pain in my ribs. Don't you dare talk about him. Don't you dare compare anything Tony did to what Dad would have done. Dad never stole from me. He never hit me. He never sold my belongings without asking. Everything wrong in my life started when you married that man and decided he was more important than your own daughter. Tears spilled down Linda's cheeks, but her expression had hardened into something I recognized from 1,000 arguments over the years. The look that said I was being unreasonable, that I was hurting her on purpose, that if I would just be more cooperative everything would be fine. You've made your choice then. You're going to destroy this family over a misunderstanding. You're going to let them arrest Tony and drag our names through the mud. Fine. But don't come crying to me when you realize what you've done. Don't expect me to be there to pick up the pieces. She turned and pushed through the doors into the humid Tampa night, leaving me standing there with Officer Torres and a waiting room full of strangers who'd witnessed my family disintegrating in real time. I watched her taillights disappear into traffic and felt something crack inside my chest that had nothing to do with bruised ribs. Torres touched my shoulder gently. I'm sorry you had to hear that. I know this is hard. She chose him, I said quietly. Even after seeing what he did to me. Even after finding out about the fraud. She chose him. A lot of victims struggle to accept the truth about their abusers. Torres guided me toward the exit. But that's not your problem to fix. Right now we need to focus on your safety and getting you somewhere secure for the night. Do you have friends in the area? Someone you trust completely? I pulled out my phone with my good hand and called Mia. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright with the happiness of someone whose birthday hadn't ended in assault and betrayal. The happiness drained from her tone quickly as I explained in halting sentences what had happened. She interrupted before I could finish. I'm leaving Orlando right now. Don't go back to your apartment. Tony might know where you live. I'll be there in 2 hours. Stay with the police until I get there. Officer Torres drove me to the police station where her partner had taken Tony hours earlier. The building was all fluorescent lights and beige walls and the particular smell of government facilities everywhere. She set me up in a small interview room with a bottle of water and a package of crackers from a vending machine while she disappeared to talk to her supervisor. I sat there in my blood-stained shirt with my arm in a cast, eating stale crackers and trying to process the fact that my entire financial identity had been stolen by the man my mother married. Every time I closed my eyes I saw my empty bedroom, all those missing pieces of my father's memory erased like they'd never existed. The comic books he'd shown me when I was 7, explaining which ones were valuable and why. The photo albums documenting birthday parties and beach trips and ordinary moments that had seemed unremarkable until they were all I had left. The stock certificates he'd been so proud of, telling me they'd grow over time and help pay for college. All of it gone. Sold or thrown away like trash by a man who'd never known my father, who'd never understood what those objects represented. Torres returned with an older detective in plain clothes who introduced himself as Detective Raymond Morris from the Financial Crimes Unit. He had gray hair cut military short and the weathered face of someone who'd spent decades seeing the worst of what people could do to each other. He sat across from me at the table and opened a laptop. Officer Torres briefed me on your situation. I've been pulling records for the past hour and I have to tell you, this is one of the more extensive cases of familial identity theft I've seen. He turned the laptop so I could see the screen. I'm going to walk you through what we've found so far, and I need you to tell me what you recognize and what you don't. Can you do that? For the next 90 minutes, Detective Morris showed me a parade of financial crimes committed in my name. Bank accounts I'd never opened. Business licenses for companies I'd never heard of. Tax returns showing income I'd never earned. Traffic violations in cities I'd never visited. The scope of it was staggering, a 15-year project of systematic theft that had started when I was 10 years old and Tony had first entered our lives. He needed a clean identity to hide behind, Morris explained. Someone young enough that they wouldn't be checking their credit. Someone whose mother would give him access to all the necessary documents. He's probably done this before. We're checking his history now, looking for previous marriages, previous stepchildren who might have similar stories. My head throbbed. The concussion was making it hard to focus, but I forced myself to pay attention. What happens now? Now we build a case. Morris closed the laptop. We've got enough to charge him with multiple counts of identity theft and fraud. Combined with the assault charge, he's looking at serious prison time. But I'm not going to lie to you, Miss Harper. This is going to be a long process. Cleaning up this kind of mess takes months, sometimes years. Every false account has to be disputed individually. Every creditor has to be notified. You'll need to file a police report for each incident, work with the credit bureaus, possibly hire a lawyer to help navigate the civil side of things. I can't afford a lawyer. I can barely afford my rent. Torres spoke up from where she'd been leaning against the wall. There are resources available for victims of identity theft. Legal aid organizations, victim advocacy groups. We'll help you connect with them. You're not going to have to figure this out alone. There was a knock on the door and a young officer stuck his head in. Detective Morris, you wanted to know about the storage unit? We found it. The one registered to Thomas Harper. My father's name sent electricity through me. What storage unit? Morris and Torres exchanged glances. We found records of a storage unit in your father's name that's been paid up for the past 16 years. The payments have been coming from an account belonging to a Robert Martinez. That name mean anything to you? Uncle Bobby. My father's best friend from college. I haven't seen him since the funeral. My mother cut off contact with all of Dad's friends after she married Tony. Morris stood up. I think we need to pay Mr. Martinez a visit. And I think you should come with us. Robert Martinez lived in a modest ranch house in Temple Terrace, the kind of neighborhood where people actually knew their neighbors and kids still rode bikes in the street after dinner. Detective Morris pulled into the driveway behind a silver sedan with a faded University of Florida sticker in the back window. It was nearly midnight, but lights blazed from every window of the house, and before we'd even gotten out of the car, the front door swung open. The man who stepped onto the porch was tall and lean with salt and pepper hair and a face that time had been relatively kind to. He wore reading glasses pushed up on his forehead and held a phone in one hand like he'd been expecting a call. When he saw me climbing out of the passenger seat with my arm in a cast and my face showing the bruises that were already forming, his expression shifted from confusion to something fierce and protective. Jessica. His voice cracked on my name. Oh my God, is that really you? What happened? Who hurt you? Detective Morris stepped forward with his badge already out. Mr. Martinez? I'm Detective Morris with Tampa PD. We need to ask you some questions about a storage unit registered to Thomas Harper. Bobby barely glanced at the badge. His eyes stayed locked on me as he came down the porch steps. Jess, sweetheart, are you okay? When's the last time you ate? You look like you're about to fall over. He shot a look at Morris. Whatever questions you have can wait until she's sitting down with some food in her. Come inside, all of you. The house smelled like coffee and old books. Bobby led us to a kitchen that was clearly the domain of someone who actually cooked, with copper pots hanging from a rack over a butcher block island and herbs growing in pots on the windowsill. He pulled out a chair at the kitchen table and practically pushed me into it before moving to the refrigerator. I've got leftover chicken parm that I can heat up. Garlic bread too. Don't argue with me. You're eating. He pulled containers from the fridge while Officer Torres tried to protest that we didn't want to impose. Bobby waved her off. It's after midnight and this girl looks like she's been through hell. Basic human decency says we feed her first, ask questions second. While the microwave hummed, Bobby poured coffee for everyone and sat down across from me. His eyes took in every visible injury with the careful attention of someone cataloging evidence. When I met his gaze, I saw tears threatening to spill over. "You look just like him. Your dad. Same stubborn chin, same eyes that don't miss anything." He shook his head slowly. "I always wondered what happened to you after Linda cut us all off." Tom's parents tried to maintain contact, but Linda threatened restraining orders. Said we were harassing her, trying to interfere with her new marriage. Eventually everyone gave up trying. Everyone except me. "You've been paying for a storage unit for 16 years? The question came out softer than I intended, disbelief mixing with something that felt dangerously close to hope. Bobby nodded. "Tom made me promise something the week before he died. He knew his heart was bad. The doctors had told him he probably had 5 years, maybe 10 if he was lucky. He didn't get the 10. But before everything went sideways, he pulled me aside and made me swear that if anything happened to him, I'd make sure certain things stayed safe for you. Things he didn't trust Linda to protect." "What things?" My voice barely rose above a whisper. The microwave beeped and Bobby got up to retrieve the food. He set a plate in front of me that held enough chicken parmesan to feed 3 people, along with garlic bread that filled the kitchen with the smell of butter and herbs. "Eat first. Then I'll show you." I didn't realize how hungry I was until the first bite hit my tongue. I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten, probably breakfast that morning before I'd left for what was supposed to be a simple birthday visit to my mother's house. Bobby watched me eat with the satisfied expression of someone who'd been waiting 16 years to perform this simple act of care. Detective Morris cleared his throat. "Mr. Martinez, we need to understand the timeline here. When did Thomas Harper set up this arrangement with you?" "About 6 months before he died." Bobby refilled his coffee cup, his movements deliberate and calm despite the tension in the room. Tom knew Linda was struggling with being a single parent. He knew money was tight and she was scared about the future. He loved her, but he also knew she could be impulsive when she was afraid. So he asked me to keep certain things safe in case she decided to make choices that weren't in Jessica's best interest. Like selling off my inheritance, I said around a mouthful of chicken. "Like that, yes." Bobby leaned against the counter, his arms crossed. Tom had been collecting comic books since he was a kid. Some of them were worth serious money even back then. He also had stock in Disney that his own father had bought when Tom was born. He'd been adding to it every year, watching it split and grow. Plus there was the Mustang. The car Morris mentioned earlier. Officer Torres had her notepad out now, writing quickly. "A 67 Mustang? Fastback. Brittany blue with white racing stripes. Tom bought it as a project car the year Jessica was born. He was restoring it for her 16th birthday." Bobby's smile was sad and distant. He used to joke that by the time she was old enough to drive it, it would be a classic worth a fortune. He was right about that part at least. "Where is it now?" Morris asked. "In the storage unit along with everything else Tom wanted protected. The comics, the stock certificates, photo albums, some jewelry that belonged to Jessica's grandmother. Even his tools and the parts he'd already bought for the Mustang. I'd been paying the storage fee out of an account Tom set up for exactly that purpose. He left enough money to cover at least 20 years of payments." I set down my fork, my appetite suddenly gone despite the excellent food. "My mother told me he didn't leave us anything except the life insurance. She said we had to sell the house because we couldn't afford it. That we had nothing." Bobby's expression hardened. "Linda got the life insurance, about $200,000 if I remember right. She also got the house free and clear because Tom had mortgage insurance. She didn't have to sell it. She chose to sell it. And I'm willing to bet she never told you about the savings account that was supposed to mature when you turned 25. "Today," I said numbly. "I turned 25 today. Happy birthday, kiddo." Bobby's voice was gentle. "Your dad set up that account when you were born. It started with $5,000 and was designed to compound until your 25th birthday. Last time I checked, which was about 3 months ago when I knew this day was coming, it was worth close to $30,000. $30,000 that my mother knew about. $30,000 that was probably why Tony had escalated his timeline, why he'd sold everything in my room before I could come asking questions about accounts and inheritances. I looked at Detective Morris, who was typing something into his phone with a grim expression. "This changes the scope of the investigation," Morris said. "If Linda Brennan knew about these assets and helped conceal them while allowing her husband to commit identity theft against her daughter, that makes her an active participant in the fraud rather than just a bystander." "She knew," I heard myself say. "She had to know. Dad wouldn't have kept something like that from her. He loved her. He trusted her to take care of me." Bobby came back to the table and sat down, reaching across to cover my good hand with his. Tom trusted the woman he married. But grief changes people. And from what I saw in the year after he died, Linda was drowning. She was terrified of being alone, of being poor, of not being able to give you the life Tom had promised. When Tony showed up offering to take care of everything, she grabbed onto him like a life raft. I don't think she meant for things to go the way they did. But somewhere along the line, she chose her own security over your well-being. "Can we see the storage unit?" Torres asked. "Tonight if possible. Given that Mr. Brennan is in custody but not yet officially charged, we want to secure any evidence before Mrs. Brennan has a chance to access it." Bobby stood and grabbed a set of keys from a hook by the back door. "It's about 20 minutes from here. Let's go get your inheritance back, Jess." The storage facility was one of those massive warehouse operations off I-75, the kind with climate-controlled units and 24-hour access. Bobby swiped a card at the gate and led us through a maze of identical hallways painted industrial beige until we reached Unit 217. His hands shook slightly as he unlocked the padlock and rolled up the metal door. The smell hit me first. Motor oil and old paper and something else, something that triggered a memory so visceral I had to grip Officer Torres's arm to stay upright. My father's cologne. That specific combination of aftershave and the soap he used, preserved somehow in this sealed space for 16 years. Bobby flipped on the overhead light and I saw it all. The Mustang sat in the center of the unit covered with a tarp, its distinctive shape unmistakable even hidden. Around it were stacked boxes labeled in my father's handwriting. Comics. Stocks. Photos. Tools. Jessica's things. Each one a time capsule of a life interrupted. I walked forward on legs that didn't feel entirely connected to my body. Detective Morris was already photographing everything, documenting the scene for evidence, but all I could see was my father's handwriting on those boxes. Proof that he'd thought about me, planned for me, tried to protect me even knowing he might not be there to see me grow up. Bobby pulled the tarp off the Mustang with the reverence of unveiling a work of art. The car gleamed under the fluorescent lights, its paint job flawless, chrome perfect. He'd finished it, my father's project car that was supposed to be for my 16th birthday. Somewhere in the last 16 years, Bobby had completed the restoration. "I finished what Tom started," Bobby said quietly, answering my unspoken question. "Took me about 5 years of weekends and evenings. I kept thinking maybe Linda would change her mind, maybe she'd reach out and I could give you what your dad wanted you to have. But she never did. So I just kept maintaining it, keeping everything ready for the day you'd come asking questions." "How did you know I'd come?" My voice cracked. "How did you know I wouldn't just accept what my mother told me?" Bobby smiled, and for a moment I saw the young man who'd been my father's best friend, who'd stood beside him at his wedding and probably held him when he was scared about dying too young. "Because you're Tom Harper's daughter. He raised you to ask questions, to stand up for yourself, to not accept easy answers. I knew eventually you'd start digging. I just didn't think it would take this long." Officer Torres was opening boxes now, photographing their contents while Detective Morris made notes. The comic book collection alone had to be worth $50,000 or more, each issue carefully preserved in protective sleeves. The stock certificates were bundled together with a statement from 3 months ago showing current value at just over $70,000. There were photo albums documenting my entire first 9 years, birthday cards my father had written to me for future birthdays he knew he'd miss, even a letter addressed to me in his handwriting with instructions not to open until my 25th birthday. I picked up the letter with shaking hands. The envelope was thick, multiple pages inside. Today was supposed to be the day I read whatever final words my father had left me. Instead, I'd spent it being assaulted and discovering my life had been built on lies. Detective Morris looked up from the box he was inventorying. "Miss Harper, I need to ask you something important. Did your mother or stepfather ever mention this storage unit? Did they ever indicate they knew it existed?" "Never." I turned the letter over in my hands, not yet ready to open it. Mom said everything was sold or donated after we moved. She said there was nothing left of Dad except what I could carry. Bobby made a sound low in his throat. "Linda called me once, about 6 months after she married Tony. Asked if I knew about any other assets Tom might have left. Said they were having money troubles and needed help. I told her I didn't know anything. I lied right to her face because by then I'd already heard rumors about how Tony treated you. Your dad's parents had tried to visit and Tony wouldn't let them in the house. Red flags everywhere. You protected me," I said, the realization settling over me like a blanket. "For 16 years, you protected the things that mattered most to my father. You kept his promise even when no one else did." "Someone had to," Bobby said simply. "Tom was my brother in every way that mattered. And your family. That doesn't stop being true just because someone puts a lock on the door." Morris closed the box he'd been examining and stood up. "We need to get all of this documented and moved to secure evidence storage. Once the criminal case is resolved, it will be released to Ms. Harper, but for now it's material to the fraud investigation." He looked at me directly. "I know this isn't ideal timing, but reading that letter might provide insight into what your father wanted you to know. Sometimes victims leave instructions or warnings in documents like this." I looked down at the envelope in my hands, at my father's careful handwriting spelling out my name. "Jessica Marie Harper, to be opened on your 25th birthday. Happy birthday, sweetheart. Love, Dad." Mia's voice echoed from the hallway outside. "Jess? Bobby? Someone said you were back here." She appeared in the doorway, still wearing the sundress she'd probably put on for a nice family dinner in Orlando, her face creased with worry. She took in the scene, the Mustang, the boxes, my tears, and crossed to me in 3 quick steps. "Oh honey. What on earth is happening?" "I'm getting my father back," I told her. "Piece by piece, I'm getting him back." Mia drove me back to her apartment in South Tampa because going back to my place felt too exposed, too vulnerable. Detective Morris had promised to have officers patrol my building, but the thought of being alone in a space Tony had probably visited, had probably cased while planning his schemes, made my skin crawl. Mia's guest room was small but safe, and she'd already texted her boss that she wouldn't be in for her morning shift at the hospital where she worked as a pediatric nurse. "You're not going to believe what I found in the glove compartment," Mia said as she helped me settle onto the guest bed with pillows propped behind my back. She held up a small plastic bag containing my pain medication from the hospital. "Officer Torres slipped these to me when you weren't looking. Said you'd probably forget about them with everything else happening." I took the pills gratefully, washing them down with the water bottle Mia provided. My wrist throbbed with every heartbeat and my ribs felt like someone had used them for percussion practice. The concussion made everything slightly fuzzy around the edges, sounds too loud and lights too bright. "Are you going to read it?" Mia nodded toward the letter from my father that I'd been clutching since we left the storage facility. "You don't have to do it tonight. It can wait until you're ready. I've been waiting 16 years." I carefully opened the envelope with my good hand, pulling out several sheets of paper covered in my father's distinctive angular handwriting. The date at the top was 3 weeks before he died. Mia sat beside me on the bed, close enough to offer support but not hovering, just being present in the way that made her the best friend I'd ever had. "My dearest Jessica," the letter began. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone and you've finally found the things I left for you. I'm sorry I'm not there to see the woman you've become. I'm sorry for all the birthdays and graduations and ordinary moments I'm going to miss. But I need you to know that even though I won't be there physically, I've tried to leave you everything you need to build a good life. The first thing you need to understand is that I loved your mother very much. She's a good person who's scared of being alone. After I'm gone, she's going to make some choices based on that fear. Some of those choices might not be what's best for you. That's why I've set things up the way I have, with Bobby as the guardian of your inheritance and your grandmother's jewelry and all the pieces of our family history that matter. I had to stop reading for a moment, my vision blurring with tears. Mia squeezed my shoulder gently and I continued. The Mustang is yours. I know you're probably too young to appreciate it right now, but someday you'll understand what it represents. Every weekend I spent working on that car, I was thinking about you. Imagining teaching you to drive, watching you head off to your first date, seeing you become independent and strong. The car is freedom, Jessica. It's mobility and possibility. Don't let anyone take it from you. The comic books are an investment. I started collecting them when I was your age and I've watched them grow in value over the years. Some of them are worth thousands of dollars now and they'll only increase. If you ever need money for college or a down payment on a house or just to get yourself out of a tight spot, those comics are there for you. Bobby knows which ones are the valuable ones. Trust him. The Disney stock is your future. My father bought it when I was born and I've been adding to it every year since you came into the world. By the time you read this, it should be worth enough to give you real options. You can use it for education, for starting a business, for traveling the world. Whatever you do, don't let anyone convince you to cash it out for their benefit. This is your security, your safety net. Protect it. My hands were shaking so badly now that Mia had to help me hold the pages steady. My father had known. Somehow he'd known exactly what would happen, had predicted the future with heartbreaking accuracy. I know this letter probably sounds paranoid. I hope I'm wrong. I hope your mother finds someone who loves both of you and treats you the way you deserve. I hope she makes choices that put your well-being first. But in case she doesn't, in case fear makes her settle for less than what's good for you, I've tried to build in protections. Bobby has instructions to hold everything until you turn 25 or until you come asking for it, whichever happens first. He also has instructions to never tell your mother where these things are stored. I know that sounds harsh, but I need you to understand something important. Sometimes the people who love us hurt us anyway. Not because they're evil, but because they're human and scared and making the best choices they can with limited options. If your mother has hurt you, if she's made choices that put someone else's needs before yours, I need you to know that it's not your fault. You deserved better. You deserved a mother who fought for you the way I would have fought for you if I'd been given more time. I was openly crying now, tears dripping onto the pages and smudging the ink slightly. Mia had her arm around my shoulders, her own face wet with sympathetic tears. The last thing I want to tell you is about strength. Real strength isn't about never getting hurt or never needing help. Real strength is knowing when to ask for support, when to set boundaries, when to walk away from people and situations that diminish you. I hope you've learned to be strong in that way. I hope you've surrounded yourself with people who build you up instead of tearing you down. If you're reading this because things have gotten bad, because someone has stolen from you or hurt you or made you question your own worth, I want you to know that you have everything you need to fight back. You have resources. You have allies. You have the legacy of a father who believed you could handle anything life threw at you. Don't let fear make you small. Don't let anyone convince you that you owe them your silence or your compliance. Stand up. Speak out. Trust the people who've proven they're trustworthy. And remember that I'm proud of you, wherever you are, whatever you've been through. You're my daughter. You're stronger than you know. All my love, now and always. Dad. At the bottom of the letter was a postscript. P.S. Bobby has the title to the Mustang with instructions to transfer it to your name when you turn 25. The car is fully restored and ready to drive. Don't let it sit in that storage unit any longer than necessary. Cars are meant to be driven, adventures are meant to be had, and life is meant to be lived. Go live yours. I folded the letter carefully and set it on the nightstand. The pain medication was starting to kick in, making everything soft and distant. Mia helped me lie down, adjusting the pillows so my cast wouldn't get tangled in the blankets. "Your dad was an incredible person," Mia said softly. "He knew exactly what you'd need to hear. He knew what was coming." The words slurred slightly as exhaustion pulled at me. "He tried to protect me even after he was gone. But Mom, she just let it all happen. Let Tony destroy everything Dad built for me." Mia brushed hair back from my forehead. "Sleep now. Tomorrow we figure out the next steps." Detective Morris said he'd call in the morning with updates. Bobby said he'd bring breakfast. "You're not alone in this, Jess. You've got people fighting for you." I closed my eyes and saw my father's face, not the faded memory I'd been living with for 16 years, but sharp and clear like he'd just been in the room. I saw him working on the Mustang in our old garage, explaining to 9-year-old me about compression ratios and horsepower. I saw him reading to me before bed, doing funny voices for all the characters. I saw him at the kitchen table with stacks of comic books, showing me which ones were rare and why. All those moments I'd thought were just ordinary father-daughter time had actually been lessons, preparations, his way of equipping me for a future he knew he wouldn't be part of. The next morning arrived with sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. I woke disoriented, my body cataloging injuries before my brain caught up with where I was and why. Cast on my left arm. Bruised ribs protesting every breath. Face tender where Tony's hand had connected. Right. My birthday. The worst birthday of my life that had somehow also given me back pieces of my father I'd thought were lost forever. Mia appeared in the doorway holding a mug of coffee. "Bobby's here. He brought enough bagels to feed an army and he's insisting you eat before we deal with anything else. Detective Morris is on his way too. He said he has news about the charges." I struggled to sit up, accepting the coffee gratefully. Everything hurt worse than it had the night before, the adrenaline having worn off and left me with the full weight of my injuries. Mia helped me to the bathroom where I confronted my reflection for the first time. A bruise bloomed across my left cheekbone in shades of purple and green. My lip was split and swollen. My eyes looked haunted, decades older than 25. Bobby was indeed in the kitchen surrounded by enough bagels and cream cheese to cater a wedding. He looked up when I shuffled in, his expression going soft with concern. "How are you holding up, kiddo?" "I've been better." I accepted the everything bagel he prepared for me, loaded with enough cream cheese to constitute a meal on its own. "What's the news?" Bobby glanced at Mia, then back at me. "Detective Morris called about an hour ago. He wanted me to give you a heads up before he gets here. They've formally charged Tony with multiple counts of identity theft, fraud, and felony battery. The prosecutor is recommending no bail given the flight risk and severity of charges." "And my mother?" The question came out smaller than I intended. Bobby's jaw tightened. "They're still investigating her involvement. From what Morris told me, they're trying to determine if she was a victim who enabled the abuse or an active participant in the fraud. The evidence is pointing toward the latter, but they need more time to build the case." The doorbell rang before I could respond. Mia went to answer it, returning with Detective Morris and a woman I didn't recognize. She was probably in her early 40s with warm brown skin and intelligent eyes behind stylish glasses. She wore a business suit that screamed lawyer and carried a leather briefcase that had seen plenty of use. "Ms. Harper," Detective Morris began, "this is Jennifer Kim from Legal Aid of Tampa Bay. She specializes in identity theft cases and has agreed to represent you pro bono." Jennifer Kim stepped forward, offering her hand which I shook carefully with my good hand. "I've reviewed your case file and I have to say, this is one of the most egregious examples of familial fraud I've encountered in 15 years of practice." She set her briefcase on the counter and pulled out a thick folder. "I'm here to help you navigate both the criminal proceedings and the civil process of recovering your identity and your assets." "How long is this going to take?" I asked, already dreading the answer. Jennifer didn't sugarcoat it. "Best case scenario, 18 months to 2 years to fully clean up your credit and recover all fraudulent debts." The criminal trial will probably happen within 6 to 9 months depending on whether your stepfather takes a plea deal. The civil suits to recover assets and damages could take longer. 2 years of my life dedicated to undoing what Tony and my mother had spent 16 years creating. The scope of it was overwhelming. I set down my bagel, appetite gone. Detective Morris pulled out his own notes. There's something else you need to know. We executed a search warrant on your mother's house this morning. We found documents that suggest Linda was aware of and actively participated in the identity theft from the beginning. Bank statements showing deposits from the fraudulent accounts. Emails between her and Tony discussing which of your documents to use. Text messages about timing the sale of your father's collectibles to coincide with your 25th birthday. She knew, I said flatly. She knew everything. Morris nodded. We'll be arresting her later today. Given her cooperation or lack thereof, she's looking at similar charges to Tony. Identity theft, fraud, conspiracy. The prosecutor is also considering charges related to the misappropriation of your inheritance. Bobby reached across the counter and squeezed my hand. I know this is hard. Finding out your mother was involved is different than suspecting it. Is it though? I pulled my hand back, anger cutting through the numbness. She chose him over me every single time. Why would this be any different? She watched him empty my room. She helped him sell my father's things. She probably suggested using my name for the accounts because who would suspect a grieving widow of stealing from her own child? Jennifer Kim spread documents across the counter, transforming Mia's kitchen into a makeshift war room. The next 6 months became a blur of court dates and depositions. Tony took a plea deal rather than face trial, accepting 20 years with possibility of parole after 12. My mother fought the charges until the evidence became impossible to deny, then crumbled in a courtroom while her public defender tried to argue for leniency based on emotional manipulation by Tony. I testified at her sentencing hearing. The prosecutor asked me to provide a victim impact statement and I'd spent weeks writing and rewriting it, trying to find words adequate for the betrayal. In the end, I kept it simple. She was supposed to protect me. Instead, she helped the man who hurt me steal everything my father left behind. That's not love. That's not family. That's just crime. The judge sentenced her to 8 years. I didn't cry when they led her away in handcuffs. I just felt empty, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left a clean hollow space where my family used to be. Bobby became the father figure I'd been missing for 16 years. He taught me how to drive the Mustang, patient and encouraging as I learned to handle the powerful engine and manual transmission. We spent Sundays working on the car together in his garage, and he'd tell me stories about my dad that my mother had never shared. How Tom had been terrified of public speaking but gave the best man speech at Bobby's wedding anyway. How he'd cried when I was born, overwhelmed by the responsibility of raising a daughter. How he'd stayed up nights after his diagnosis, writing letters to me for birthdays and milestones he knew he'd miss. The financial recovery was as brutal as Jennifer had warned. Every fraudulent account required documentation, affidavits, police reports. Credit bureaus moved at glacial speed. Creditors demanded proof that seemed impossible to provide. But slowly, methodically, Jennifer and I dismantled the false identity Tony had built. Each cleared account felt like reclaiming another piece of myself. Mia's guest room became my home for 8 months until my credit was good enough to qualify for a small house in Temple Terrace, 3 streets away from Bobby. The Disney stock paid for the down payment. The comic book collection stayed in climate-controlled storage, insurance against future emergencies. The savings account that had matured on my 25th birthday funded therapy sessions where I learned the difference between forgiveness and acceptance. Officer Rachel Torres became a friend. She'd check in every few weeks, taking me for coffee and listening as I processed the wreckage of my family. She'd known my father when they were young and had her own regrets about not staying in touch with his widow and daughter. We were both learning that you can't fix the past, but you can choose what you carry forward from it. 18 months after the worst birthday of my life, I stood in Bobby's driveway with the Mustang's title and my name and keys in my hand. The car gleamed in the Florida sunshine, every inch of it a testament to my father's love and Bobby's faithfulness. Mia snapped photos while Bobby beamed with pride. "Your dad would lose his mind seeing you behind that wheel," Bobby said, his voice thick with emotion. "He always said you'd be a natural driver." Looks like he was right about that too. I slid into the driver's seat, feeling the leather warm from the sun, the steering wheel solid under my hands. The engine roared to life with a sound that was pure power and possibility. In the rearview mirror I could see Mia and Bobby waving, the two people who'd shown up when my blood family disappeared. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Kim. "Final credit report just came through. Score is 712. Officially back in good standing. Congratulations on making it through." I drove through Temple Terrace with the windows down and music up, past the storage facility where my inheritance had waited for 16 years, past the police station where Officer Torres had first discovered the scope of the fraud, past the hospital where they'd set my broken wrist. Each location was a landmark on a journey I never wanted to take but somehow survived. The pharmacy where I worked had held my position despite the chaos, and my manager had actually promoted me to lead technician after I returned. She said anyone who could organize the legal battle I'd fought could definitely handle inventory management and staff scheduling. The job wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, earned through my own effort rather than built on stolen identity. At a red light, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. The bruises had faded months ago. The cast had come off. The split lip had healed without a scar. But my eyes were different now. Older, maybe. Definitely wiser. I'd learned what my father tried to teach me in that letter. Real strength wasn't about never getting hurt. It was about getting up anyway, about asking for help, about setting boundaries with people who claimed to love you but treated you like property. My mother had written letters from prison that I'd returned unopened. Maybe someday I'd be ready to hear what she had to say. Maybe I'd find my way to some version of forgiveness that didn't require reconciliation. But that day wasn't today. Today was about driving the car my father built for me, living in the house I'd bought with inheritance he protected, building a life on the foundation of people who'd actually shown up. The light turned green and I shifted into first gear, feeling the Mustang respond beneath me like it had been waiting 16 years for exactly this moment. Bobby had been right. Cars were meant to be driven. Adventures were meant to be had. Life was meant to be lived. And I was finally ready to live mine. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.